Yes, ma'am. Hello, everyone. Let's bow our head
Please
and
proceed.
feel the presence of the Lord. Lord Almighty God, uh, we seek for your guidance, and in our review session tonight, please give us knowledge and strength to retain or the topics that we discuss today. Uh, Help us to retain this until the actual date of our exam. We will praise it in the name of our Almighty God through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Junior Nicholas. Just a moment. Share. Hmm. Sorry. That's me. Okay. So you're seeing now. Hmm. Okay. So just to continue on last night's lecture on the Garden City movement. Just I know we have run through already this slide for a while. So just to reiterate that Letchworth Garden City, okay, it was developed in the early 20th century. So he's the pioneer. It's the pioneering realization of Ebenezer Howard's Garden City ideals. So this it was designed primarily by Sir Raymond Unwin. Sir Raymond Unwin and Barry Parker. So Letchworth remains a model of planned suburban development and a foundational example in the history of urban planning. It was conceived in 1903. Letchworth was intended to address the overcrowding, pollution, and poor living conditions of industrial cities while avoiding the social and economic isolation of rural villages. So Anwi and Parker implemented Howard's concepts by blending spacious, low-density housing with communal open spaces, integrating green belts, and providing a separation between residential, industrial, and agricultural zones. So Letchworth's design prioritized wide tree-lined streets, accessible parks, pedestrian pathways, and the incorporation of allotments and gardens for each home. So, and also promoting both physical and mental health. So the next one, Wellwyn. Okay, so we have two important garden cities. The first is Letchworth, then the Wellwyn Garden City. It's the second major example of the garden city movement in the UK, designed and developed beginning in 1920 under the leadership of architect planner Louis de Soissons. So, building on the pioneering work at Letchworth, Wellwyn Garden City represents a further refinement of Ebenezer Howard's vision for harmonious, healthy, and beautiful urban living. So, Wellwyn Garden City was conceived to unite the benefits of both town and country. You remember the town and country? So, um, balancing modern amenities with the tranquility, space, and greenery of the countryside. So, Louis de Soissons' master plan introduced formal access, elegant boulevards, and green spaces to create a sense of order and dignity. The city was designed with a distinctive central parkway and series of three-line boulevards radiating from the center, integrating civic, commercial, and residential zones with abundant open space. So that's the integration of green spaces. Okay. Hampstead, anyway, Hampstead Garden is it's called Hampstead Garden Suburb. Okay. It's one of the most notable and influential garden suburbs in the world, located in northwestern London. Developed in the early 20th century, it stands as a key example of how garden city principles could be adapted within a major metropolitan area. So it was founded by Dame Henrietta Burnett. So where can we find that one? In 1907. So Hampstead Garden suburb was envisioned as a model community that would promote social reform and high quality living conditions for all social classes, not just for the wealthy. So the project was designed and laid out by renowned architects and planners, including Sir Raymond Unwin and Sir Edwin Lutyens, both pioneers of early 20th century town planning. So, where Letchworth, again, you're saying, short Garden City, Wellwyn, okay. We barely cannot see the map. However, on this one, okay, it's just the concept. It's so London and its Green Belt, it's a testament to success of Sir Ebenezer Howard, that the concept and successful implementation of the London Green Belt directly reflects the vision of Howard, who who is known as the pioneer of the Garden City movement. So right now on City Beautiful movements, I think it's one of the most familiar movement for us, because primarily it is okay for the Garden City movement. It's Ebenezer Howard and successors. Now for this one, for the City Beautiful movement, we celebrate their some people like I would like to start with this one because the City Beautiful movement showcased urban ideals like the Chicago World's Fair, known as the White City. Okay. So it was an exposition. It was meticulously planned, temporary city that demonstrated the power of urban beauty, order, and monumental design. The layout conceived by Daniel Barnham, so that makes it very special for Philippines because he had his one of the most valuable works of Daniel Barnham in Philippines. So um, the the layout here, conceived by Daniel Barnum and Frederick Law Olmsted, showcase broad boulevards, axial alignments, grand neo-classical buildings, and integrated landscape features. So the fairs, I'm talking about the Chicago World Fair. So the fair's architecture drew heavily on view arts principles, presenting a harmonious ensemble of pavilions. Um, what else aside from the also reflecting pools, okay, like swimming pool, formal gardens, and wide vistas. So the result was a vision of the city as a place of inspiration, dignity, and civic pride. So, okay, let's see that one. Okay. The images here, as you can see, just a moment lang. Here, the images here, what are this? Yeah, fisheries building. Okay, the fisheries building, Grand Basin, Port of Honor. You can see that. So they all exemplify this grandeur. So the as historian Mel Scott notes the exposition was an enthralling amalgam of classical ideals and modern ambition. So it combined the democratic legacy of ancient Greece and Rome with the formal elegance of Paris. So visitors were struck by the city's order, cleanliness, and monumental scale, especially in contrast to the often chaotic, polluted, and unplanned industrial city of the late 19th century. So the exposition had a profound effect on American city planning. Uh, for some reasons. Number one, it inspired a generation of architects and planners to pursue beauty and order in urban design. And another is that it catalyzed the City Beautiful movement, leading to the design of civic centers, parks, boulevards, and monumental public buildings across the US. So it also emphasized the idea that cities would elevate the human spirit, foster civic pride, and improve social order. But no matter how famous or how significant the exposition and City Beautiful movement was, still there were critics and limitations. Um, well, it brought lasting aesthetic improvements, but critics noted that the focus on grandeur sometimes overshadowed practical needs such as affordable housing, sanitation, and social equity. So later, planning movements would seek to integrate beauty with function and inclusiveness. So the Chicago Fair was more than a spectacle. It was a transformative vision that popularized the belief that urban beauty, monumental architecture, and thoughtful planning could shape not just the cities but the character of a nation. Hmm. Here, the Let's see the core principles. So let's see the horticultural building. Okay. So it's so also okay. In the City Beautiful movement, it strengthened sanitation. Okay, so these are actually the core principles. Core principles of the City Beautiful movement. The CBM, or the City Beautiful movement, sought to transform cities into visually pleasing or orderly and uplifting environments. So believing that beautiful surroundings fostered civic pride, social harmony, and improve public morals. So how beautification improves cities. So it mentions sanitation, where urban design incorporated better waste disposal, clean water supply, and wider boulevards for uh, light and air, helping to address the health crisis of crowded industrial cities. So, aesthetics, it focused on grand public spaces, actual plants and landscape parks, integrating art and architecture into the urban core. And then it also encouraged the construction of libraries, museums, civic centers, and public monuments as landmark of shared identity. So uh, that's the coverage of civic improvement, building design, because it promoted neoclassical and view arts styles, symmetry, and visual harmony. For civic spirit, beautification was seen as a catalyst for good citizenship, social cohesion, and urban pride. So these were the cities influenced by the City Beautiful movement: Chicago, San Francisco, Detroit, Denver, Columbus, Madison, Montreal, Canberra, New Delhi in India, Brasilia, in Brazil, Abuja is did I pronounce it correctly? In Nigeria, Islamabad, Pakistan. Okay. Um. So here, okay, we're now on on people behind City Beautiful movement. Of course, it was led by Daniel Barnham. So he was known to be the father of American city planning and the City Beautiful movement. And earlier we were talking about the World's Columbian Exposition. So it was Barnham collaborating with Frederick Law Olmsted and a team of leading architects that created the White City in Chicago, which became a national model for urban beauty, order, and civic design. So the exposition, again, let me reiterate that the exposition showcased monumental buildings, grand boulevards, and landscape parks, elevating public expectations for American cities and launching the City Beautiful movement. So there, and then the second is the plan of Chicago. It's different from the plan for the region of Chicago. You notice the year there. So let me clean. The plan of Chicago was in 1909. This was the first comprehensive city plan in the US, setting the precedent for modern urban planning. It emphasized the integration of transportation networks, civic centers, park systems, and lakefront improvements. So it inspired the professionalization of urban planning as a discipline. And then for the plan for the for the region of Chicago, please note the year that was the plan that were established. So that regional okay, the 1956 plan for the Chicago region extended Barnham's vision to the metropolitan scale, focusing on open space, transportation, and suburban development. Um, Also, how it influenced beyond Chicago, meaning even outside Chicago. Barnum produced master plans for San Francisco. Okay. Um, Also, Manila. Okay. Manila in 1903 to 1905, Baguio 1911, and contributed to the planning of cities like Baltimore, Buffalo, Cleveland. So his work in Manila and Baguio demonstrates the global export of American planning ideals during the colonial period. Uh, okay. Okay. He advocated for Baroque principles or pursued Baroque aesthetics or principles. So uh, drawing inspiration from Paris, Vienna, and classical Rome. And so, okay, and it sought to instill also civic virtue and pride by elevating the city's physical environments. So, what are the characteristics of Baroque aesthetics? Grandeur, monumentality, or drama and scale, exuberance, cohesiveness, and symmetry. But there were criticisms also of the Chicago plan. Um, so it said planned as an aristocratic city for merchant prince. And what does it mean? The Chicago plan was sometimes seen as designed for the elite or for the mercantile elite. That's why it said aristocratic city for merchant princes rather than the wider population. Then did not account for the realities of downtown real estate development, leading to overbuilding and congestion. So meaning that it underestimated the market pressures in downtown land, resulting in subsequent overdevelopment and congestion not anticipated in the plan. Also, it created a monumental business core without sufficient integration with everyday commercial activity and mixed-use development. So commercial convenience should have been given more importance. So, um, there were also modern critics there that the focus on monumental civic beauty sometimes came at the expense of addressing deeper social and economic inequalities. And subsequent planners have noted the importance of flexibility, mixed-use zoning, and inclusivity areas where Barnham's plans were less responsive. So, but uh, undeniably, um, Barnham, or he had a lasting legacy. Barnham helped establish the foundations of American urban planning as both an art and a science. So he was famous for the phrase, okay, make no little plans. You know, if you try to read this with, um, yeah, with a little emotion or a little drama or something, that you would appreciate um, who Daniel Barnham was, or how how he established his legacy in urban planning. So make no little plans, they have no magic to steer men's blood, and probably themselves will not be realize. Make big plans, aim high, in hope and work. Remember that our sons and grandsons are going to do things that would stagger us. Let your watchword be order and your beacon beauty. Think big. So he was also famous for advocating that every citizen should be within walking distance of a park. Okay. So his work and philosophy transformed the American urban landscape, setting new standards for civic grandeur and comprehensive planning. While his approach was visionary, it also highlighted the need for planning that's both beautiful and socially responsive. So let's see other slides here. Mm, okay. So yeah, like plans for Chicago in 1906 to '09. Yeah, Chicago was envisioned by Barnum as Paris on a prairie. What's the prairie? Paris on a prairie concept. That's an inspiration derived from Paris. That Barnum's plan for Chicago was inspired by the transformation of Paris under Baron Haussmann. Wide boulevards, monumental vistas, and strong visual access converging on grand public buildings and open spaces. So Barnum aimed to elevate Chicago from an industrial city to a world-class urban center, marrying function, beauty, and order. So he had today. Okay, so that's another one. So he had actually we cannot find it here. So the key features of Barnum plans. So I'd like to reiterate also. Number one, monumental boulevards and actual planning. What's AXIL? So AXIAL. So the plan featured wide boulevards radiating from civic centers, echoing Parisian streetscapes and creating dramatic urban vistas. Second, second feature of Barnum's plan uh, is integrated park and waterfront system, where Barnum prioritized parks and green spaces, notably along Lake Michigan. So the lakefront was designated public forever, so providing recreation, access, and scenic value. Another key feature is the civic and cultural centers, that the plan centralized civic institutions, museums, and government buildings in impressive settings, using symmetry and grandeur to foster civic pride. Then also, his early concepts of land use zoning were applied to organize industry, commerce, and residential areas, reducing chaos and improving livability. Then also, one of the important features was the incorporation of transportation networks. His plan that according to Barnum, are railways, roadways, and harbors to be coordinated to enhance connectivity and efficiency. So this that actually was an early model of multimodal, okay, urban planning. So again, undeniably, yeah, he had a, this huge legacy because it became a model for American city planning. So not just Chicago, influencing Chicago, but other cities that sought to combine beauty, utility, and social value. So this vision was the capstone of the City Beautiful movement, emphasizing that cities could be both practical and inspiring, and also that they could be places for commerce and for civic life. Then we have it today. So can you see this one? So these are Barnham's. This is the Barnham's plan for Manila from 1903 to 1906. That well, I hope that I'm not sure if it was tackled in your master's or your diploma degree regarding the historical context of Barnham's plan for Manila. That after the Spanish American War, the US sought to transform Manila into a showcase of American colonial urban planning. So it was Daniel Barnham, celebrated for his Chicago and City Beautiful work, was commissioned to prepare a comprehensive plan for Manila, aiming to modernize the city and reflect American civic ideals. So again, the key features of Barnham's Manila Plan is our grand civic axis, parks and open spaces, waterfront development, radial and grid street patterns, and then also the integration of intramurals and new districts. That the plan respected Manila's Spanish colonial heritage, such as the intramurals, while expanding the city outward with new planned districts and suburbs. So while not all aspects of Barnum's plan were realized, his work established the framework for Manila's major boulevards, such as the Ross Boulevard, public parks and open spaces. So the influence of the City Beautiful movement still evident in Manila's remaining green spaces, civic centers, and grand urban vistas. Barnham's planning ideals were also extended to Baguio City, designed as a hill station and summer capital. Um, however, in most of, if not all movements, there were critics and that can be told. So, as with many beautiful city, as with many city beautiful projects, Barnham's plan prioritized monumental beauty and civic grandeur, but faced challenges in implementation, such as funding, also land ownership, and later urban pressures. So over time, much of the original plan was compromised by population growth, traffic congestion, and unregulated urbanization. But the foundations of civic design, open space remain visible. Now we move forward um to Charles. It's difficult to pronounce French name. Charles Edward Genere, something like that. I will check later next time we encounter his name again. But he's also known as Lou Corbusier. Okay, Le. I mean, it was written Le, but if you pronounce it Lou, anyway, it's not an oral exam, so you can pronounce it as it is. Lou Corbusier was a Swiss French architect and planner, often regarded as the last major figure of the City Beautiful movement. Yet he pioneered a radically new direction in urban theory and design through his influential book Urbanisme. In 1925, Lou Corbusier became a leading voice for high density, high rise urban living and modernist planning, departing sharply from traditional picturesque European city forms. So, what was his core philosophy? His core philosophy was decongest the center by building high. Okay, that Le Corbusier argued that the chronic congestion and squalor of industrial era cities could be solved not by spreading out, but by concentrating development vertically. He envisioned replacing old, crowded neighborhoods with tall, regimented towers surrounded by open, green spaces. So this approach would maximize land efficiency and allow for generous parks, air, and light. Um, okay, let's just check. The in Le Corbusier's will reduce is it, meaning radiant city model. The city was to be strictly zoned, meaning separating areas for living, working, and recreation, all connected by wide boulevards and efficient highways. So, the traditional street, which he meant when he said the traditional street, it's full of activity, variety, and social mixing, was to be minimized. So instead, order and rationality would define urban life, prioritizing functionality over historic character or complexity. So, okay, let me read this one by Lou Corbusier, that by this immense step in evolution, so brutal and overwhelming, we burn our bridges and break with the past. So what he meant was there should be no heritage conservation. So his it runs contrary to heritage principles. I mean, Lou Corbusier's concept of that was his core philosophy, and his approach focused much on architectural style on urban order, as on urban order. So Le Corbusier championed cubist, um yeah, and minimalist aesthetics. So he also championed stark geometric forms, uh, clean lines, white facades, and a machine-like efficiency. So he believed that beauty and social progress would arise from logical, standardized design, which was a vision sometimes critiqued as utopian, on overly deterministic. So he was criticized for the paradox, addressing congestion by creating more congestion. So Lou Corbusier's radical break from the past meant little regard for historical context. Okay, that's one thing. Then also little regard for existing social fabrics or human scale urbanism. By this immense step, so that's why he said this one. By this immense steps or in evolution, so brutal and overwhelming, we burn our bridges and break with the past. So, okay, um, critics argued that his model, by increasing building heights and density, could paradoxically generate more congestion, not less. So particularly if the supporting transport and public amenities failed to keep pace. So his influence is visible in the global proliferation of high-rise housing blocks and tower in the park developments, which have been both praised for efficiency and criticized for their impact on community life, social equity, and urban vibrancy. So Le Corbusier's ideas shaped shaped post-war urban planning worldwide, especially in the design of new towns, public housing, and business districts, However, his legacy is deeply ambivalent, admired for visionary ambition, but increasingly questioned for its social and environmental shortcomings. His work, however, remains a critical touchstone or a critical, legacy or accomplishment, uh, or how is this? It's a critical touchstone in debates over density, modernism, and the future of urban form. His vision for the city was revolutionary, aiming to use density, rationality, and architectural clarity as solutions to the ills of industrial urbanism. His theories, however, his theories continue to provoke discussion, serving as both inspiration and caution for planners like us and architects also, who are grappling with contemporary urban challenges. So uh, he is he was unique, right? He was a unique persona. Even his photos here. So I hope you would read about Lou Corbusier more and more. So let's continue about his Radiant City. So the central objective is to decongest the city by increasing density at the core and to concentrate population without congestion. Um, so that's concentration without congestion. Lou Corbusier's Radiant City was again, okay, to wrap up. It was conceived in 1930, so that's the um, houses. His goal was to decongest the city, not by expanding outward, but by intensifying development at the center through high density vertical living. So let's see about, because there are some other characteristics here that um we need to study. The Radiant City was envisioned as a vast park filled with a uniform 60-story, okay? Please note, 60-story tower blocks. It arranged or yeah, arranged in precise rows within a vast park. So, and zigzagging apartment buildings, this designed with modern technology to accommodate 3 million people. Okay. I think it's easy to 63. It's easy to memorize that. So the plan could, according to Lou Corbusier, the plan could theoretically house up to 3 million people. So that's what he meant by that. So buildings, okay, let me see. Each building group stood apart in a park-like landscape, featuring flat roofs, simple planar surfaces, and box-like forms with minimal ornamentation. So is that easy to understand, right? That buildings would have flat roofs, minimal ornamentation, box-like shapes, um, reflecting a modernist, aesthetic and the possibilities of industrial building technology. So, uh, to understand better, each group of towers would be isolated in parkland, allowing for ample light, air, and access to nature. So that's a stark contrast to the crowded, irregular city blocks of the 19th century. Also on zoning and spatial segregation, what did he say about that? Ensuring maximum sunlight, and then stages. Okay. He also Lou Corbusier also proposed the strict segregation of urban functions, housing, housing, work, recreation, and transportation were each given their own designated zones, and also housing and office towers were grouped to maximize sunlight exposure. So that's that's trying to rephrase them, reflecting his belief in rational, healthy environments. Uh, Also in this context, major cultural, recreational, and civic facilities such as stadiums, museums, and sports complexes were strategically located along the waterfront to offer broad public benefit. So the Radiant City was a clear departure from historical organic city forms. Le Corbusier championed a futuristic urban image centered on the skyscraper, on the private automobile, and high-speed highways. So streets as spaces of social life and commerce were minimized as well. Then the focus was on efficiency, circulation, and monumental scale. So, um, Le Corbusier's Radiant City directly influenced the planning of post-war central business district um, worldwide. So inspiring the proliferation of high-rise office parks, tower blocks, and super blocks in cities from Europe and to the Americas and Asia. While this vision enabled new approaches to density and green space, critics argue that it led to sterile, impersonal environments, if you know what I mean by that, and often failed to support vibrant community life. The super block and tower in the park typology became a staple of modernist public housing and new town design with mixed results. So the lack of street life, human scale, and social cultural integration remains a key criticism of Le Corbusier's Radiant City. What else? Yeah, his Radiant City sought to resolve the urban problems of his time, but by harnessing the power of verticality and also green space and modern technology. Although few cities fully realize his exact vision, his influence remains visible. Uh, in the DNA of modern urban farm and in the ongoing dialogue about the relationship between density, design, and urban life. So, mm, Unville contemporary, uh, in English it's contemporary city that he yeah that was his Le Corbusier's vision began with that. That's why Uneville contemporary, which proposed an orderly city of identical tower blocks set in expansive gardens housing up to 3 million people. That was the same here, 3 million people. What else? I think it's many, pero para-pareho lang yung sinasabi, no? So, okay. I think here I should emphasize about Okay. Mm, okay. So Corbusier's designs, according to the critics, Corbusier's design was good for temporary living, such as hotels, or that is hotels, but not for permanent residence. So he yeah, that's his concept. Uh, Probably because of the lack of mixed use, mixed uses, ground level activity, and human scale spaces often led to environments that felt alienating and impersonal. While the approach offered efficient land use and some initial promise for affordable housing, it failed to support the everyday social and economic interactions that are vital to neighborhood life. Then here, tenement housing and the breakdown of American communities in 1912 to 1960s. In the US, from the early 20th century through the 1960s, mass-produced public housing and tenement blocks became associated with social and economic decline, especially in large cities like New York and Chicago. So rather than creating cohesive neighborhoods, these superblocks isolated residents, reduced informal street life, and ultimately undermined the sense of community and safety. So over time, these developments became concentrated pockets of poverty, suffering from poor maintenance, crime, and social stigma. So, um, and let me read this one that after Jewish residents moved to wealthier areas, Black Americans and Latinos became the primary occupants of neighborhoods like Harlem and the Bronx in New York City, thus transforming these former Jewish quarters into new cultural and residential communities. So, uh, is the patterns of social racial segregation, economic exclusion became entrenched as Black Americans and Latinos were often relegated to under-resourced neighborhoods such as Harlem and the Bronx. So while earlier immigrant groups moved out as their fortunes improved, as they become wealthier. So the concentration of poverty and the lack of social services and minimal opportunities for upward mobility contributed to the breakdown of American urban communities, reinforcing cycles of disadvantage. So, what are the lessons that should be learned here? That simply providing shelter through standardized housing is not enough. Successful urban environments must support diverse activities, foster social interaction, and provide economic opportunity. So, urban renewal and modernist tower in the park models have largely been abandoned in favor of more integrated, mixed use, and community driven approaches. So, if you notice, today's best practices in urban planning emphasize walkability, diversity, human scale, and the preservation, revitalization of existing communities rather than the wholesale, the whole demolition and replacement. So let's move. So these are the characteristics of modernism. Baka lang tanungin. And then, so modernism in architecture, emerged as a radical departure from historical styles, emphasizing new ideas, forms, and technologies suited for a rapidly changing society. So, architects sought to break free from decorative traditions, focusing instead on some or a more honest expression of structure and functions. And uh, they they sought to reject historic precedent uh, as a source of architectural inspiration. Also, it considered function, okay, as a prime generator of form. So meaning, form follows function, and then employed materials and technology in an innovative way that modernism took advantage of advancement in materials like steel, concrete, and glass. So the innovative use of these materials allowed for new structural possibilities and transparency in buildings. Um, what is what are the morphological characteristics of buildings in this era where the um modernism, architectural modernism started to, to take root. So style free plan, universal space, then walls freed from load bearing means that yeah, probably attributing it to steel frames and reinforced concrete that walls could be used as screens or partitions rather than as structural supports, leading to more creative facades. Then the cantilevers also, uh, then glass at corners of buildings, use of concrete. Okay, so that was before. I mean, we have better or more modern designs these days. So skyscrapers also, okay. Just for me to read this last part here, baka lang tanungin. In 1885, Chicago's 10-story home insurance building became the world's first skyscraper, made possible by the use of steel frame and the invention of the elevator. So take please note 1885. Okay. Um, so the home insurance building in Chicago is often cited as the world's first skyscraper. Um, and so this innovation pioneered in Chicago paved the way for modern cities defined by high-rise skylines and efficient land use. Mm, So why we are even discussing about this one is because it was uh, the legacy of modernism, but modernism reshaped urban environments across the world, laying the groundwork for the glass, and steel cityscapes we see today. And so while sometimes critic for austerity, its influence is seen in nearly every major urban center, and its principles remain foundational in contemporary architectural and planning. We're back to Lou Corbusier, right? So his housing in formerly communist East Europe. Um, because after World War II, communist governments in Eastern Europe adopted many of Lou Corbusier's principle for mass housing. The goal was to rapidly accommodate millions of urban migrants and replace substandard pre-war housing stock. So this model suited the socialist agenda of, you know, uh, uniformity and egalitarian living conditions. So separation of pedestrian vehicular movement, emphasis on communal green spaces, and um, yeah, standardized prefab construction. So you can see all this the image here that illustrates a typical socialist era housing estate. Okay. So tingnan natin where should I end here. So, okay. This will be the last slide. Brasilia, Brazil, 1957 as Radiant City, by Lucio Costa and Oscar Niemeyer. So Brasilia was conceived as a new purpose-built capital for Brazil, symbolizing national progress and modernity. So it was designed by urban planner Lucio Costa and architect Oscar Niemeyer. The city was constructed in record time and officially inaugurated in 1960. So the design drew direct inspiration from Le Corbusier's Radiant City or the Ville-Radius model, emphasizing monumental scale, geometric order, and the segregation of urban functions. So it became a model of centralized planning. So rapid construction and architectural innovation. It's a UNESCO. It became a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1987 for its cultural and architectural significance. So successfully shifted Brazil's administrative capital to the country's interior, so fostering national integration. Brasilia remains a global symbol of the ambitions and limitations of modernist urban planning. So it demonstrates both the power and challenges of implementing utopian city models at a scale reflecting Le Corbusier's vision, but also exposing the flows of radical separation of land uses and over reliance on automobiles. So it's still the same, still a complete large-scale realization of the Radiant City model. So tomorrow we'll do still. So now, just to introduce this type of model, that it was the New Towns movement was a reaction or a yeah, it's a reaction to overcongestion in Le Corbusier's skyscraper cities, particularly New York and Toronto, Canada. So, in contrast, they pursued Garden City ideas of Ebenezer Howard. So, looking forward also to, I hope you will all be present tomorrow because we need to finish until the end, okay? So that we can move to other theories. Meron, there are in theories kasi there are groupings like spatial theories, theories in regional planning, dami. And so I would like to end here. So for those who were not around last night, you need to check and review from the recording, the latest Zoom recording from Jen's file. So let me stop here. And so we need to, have photo documentation. Thank you again.